Good afternoon, everyone. Today is December 16th, and the Board of Commissioners joint a workshop with the Civil Service Commission is called to order at 3:30 p.m. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Black.
Present.
Vice Mayor Hodges.
Here.
Commissioner Weinstein.
Here.
Commissioner Andrews.
Here.
Commissioner Douther.
Present.
The floor is now open for public comment on anything that is not on the agenda. Floor is closed.
Madam Mayor, if I may. Back in the September workshop, the Board of Commissioners decided that they wanted to have joint meetings with each one of the advisory boards, and with Claire's help, we went through and a lot of them had just met because of the budget process with the commission, and the Planning Commission had also met. So the only one that we had remaining for this year was the Civil Service Commission. And then in January, I'll get with you all and we can set a schedule for the next year on when we want to have the other boards back in. So just to give you an update and before we start with the agenda item for the communications with the Civil Service Commission.
Okay.
Yes, Mayor, may I make a point too, just to kind of piggyback on what I guess the city manager said. I know the Civil Service Commission has put a lot of time and effort into those revisions in the personnel manual, and I do hope that that's part of the report, because it's my understanding that the purpose of this meeting is for the Civil Service Commission chairman to give us a report of what has happened during the year, what job descriptions maybe have been projects, cost of living increases, I said job descriptions, yeah. And I do hope that that personnel revision is a part of it, because I think that was a huge chunk of the work that they did, and also how many meetings they've had this past year. So thanks. Thank you.
I also would like to thank them. It's a very difficult job, and you do a very good job at it. So is there someone who wants to be the spokesperson?
Actually, Madam Mayor, if you don't mind, I'd actually like to kick it off. I've got a handful of questions for the Civil Service Board. One thing that's never been done is we've never actually met with this group, going back as far as anybody can remember. We've had some incidents over the past couple of years, and their voice wasn't being heard. So I think that's, I don't know if they have cost of living increases today or anything like that on their agenda to speak to us about, but our communication with the Civil Service Board has been, well, non-existent. I mean, we can't even say it was poor, it was non-existent. So what I'd like to do is, one of the issues that is near and dear to some of the members that have been on the commissions on their minds, and I think something that's been left open, is the grievance procedure. These guys are tasked with, by far, the most important of all of our boards. They're charged with our most important task, and that is the task of protecting our most valuable asset, and that's our employees. So I want to make sure that since we've had a grievance hearing, okay, and it was not done by the book, and that we review it, not dig down into the details and go 10,000 feet into it, but to review the process and to review the procedures to make sure it doesn't happen again. Because the next time it happens, and it happens in the way and the manner in which it did, we're going to be facing a very big lawsuit, okay? So I want to discuss that. I want to discuss why we would have a pre-termination hearing that a civil service hearing or a civil service board would hear. That's not their job. So there's a lot of moving parts and unanswered questions here, and this is their opportunity to speak to this board, because frankly, when they were given the opportunity to speak, they were almost ridiculed, saying that this wasn't a board that was needed. Mr. Evans didn't want to hear them or even hear their opinions or hear anything about what they were talking about. And since, you know, he was the one directly corresponding with them, I think today is their day to talk and to speak to us and let us know what went on. But most importantly for us, it's our opportunity to make sure that we do it right the next time, because there may not be a next time after that. I mean, these lawsuits, these employment lawsuits run very, very steep, and I think it's almost irresponsible for us not to make sure that our procedures and policies are in place in order to take advantage of that. So with that, if you don't mind, I would like to start and ask a few questions of some people in the audience, bring them up to the podium, and kind of go from there, if that pleases the board.
Before he starts that, I just want to say, if we're going to talk about employees, I'm out of here, because the charter says we can't.
John, that's not what the charter says.
Let me read it
John,
to you.
the charter says, what I'm talking about today is not,
If you start talking about specific
I'm not-
employees, I'm up and out of here.
okay, then leave now. Do us a favor. Thank you.
Because the charter says.
The charter doesn't say that you can let your employee run
Mayor, point of
rampant
order, please,
and
if
not-
we could have them talk at one at a time instead of both at the
Thank
same
you,
time.
Ralph. I got it. The charter, our responsibility in that charter, as far as employees is concerned, is to make sure that our charter officers are following the charter. If they're not following the charter, then yes, we're going to have to discuss reasons why they're not following the charter. I won't bring up anything specific and anything that's done. Stop being so defensive about it and let me speak, for Christ's sakes.
You spoke, now can I speak?
Sure, go ahead.
Please, no offensive language.
4.6 of the charter, inferences and administration, except for the purpose of inquiries and investigation, the Board of Commissioners or its members shall deal with the city officers and its employees who are subject to the direction of the supervision of the city manager, solely through the city manager. And neither the Board of Commissioners or its members shall give orders to any such officers or employees, neither publicly nor privately, except as provided under the emergency powers section of this charter. The Board of Commissioners or any of its committee or members, individually or collectively, shall not direct or request the appointment of any person or its removal from the office of the city manager, by the city manager or any other or his subordinates, or in any manner, directly or indirectly, take part of the appointment or removal of any officers or employees or members of Board of administrative services of the city of Madeira Beach, Florida. The Board of Commissioners nor any of its members, therefore, shall give orders to any subordinates or officers of said city, either public or privately.
You're completely off topic.
I interpret that, but we don't talk about individual things. I believe that this should be the Civil Service Commission coming in and briefing us on what they've done in the last year, period.
You absolutely went way off topic. We are allowed to investigate. It says in the you read it in the first line. We are allowed to investigate what we're talking about. And if you leave, you are absolutely proving my point that you don't care. That you don't care, that you are going to let a city manager run roughshod over our employees. And I'm not going to sit here and let that happen. It is our job to manage our employees. If our charter officers are breaking the charter, just like we talked about Ralph the other day, why was that any different? If our charter officers are breaking the charter, we should know that they are breaking the charter. That is our responsibility, and it's irresponsible for us not to listen to what these people have to say. You poo-pooed them the last time they came up here. You said that there shouldn't be a Civil Service Commission, that it's No, there should be. They're the only line of defense our employees have. That's it.
Commissioner Andrews.
That is incorrect.
When he's yelling at me, what are you talking about, Maggie? Why are you singling me out?
Well, if you listen to me, you'd know why I am. Okay, please. First of all, please lower your voice. There's no need to be shouting. Secondly, I think maybe what you say should be something that could be investigated. But this meeting, as far as I was aware of, was to have them, as Commissioner Douthit said, to let us know what they've done throughout the year. If you have specific questions about specific items, they should be brought to a workshop agenda setting meeting, and then we can talk about it freely at a workshop.
I'd also like to point out that it says here, the Civil Service Commission is a government agency that is constituted by legislative to regulate the employment of working conditions of civil servants, overseeing hiring and promotion, and promote the value of the public service. It's the role roughly same as the Human Resources Department in the corporation. So we have a Human Resources Department. So yeah, we got both. But we're not supposed to get involved. And like I said, this is an at-will state or a right-to-work state also.
You really don't even read. It's a grievance hearing that we're talking about.
But we're not supposed to be involved.
We're not?
No.
We appoint this board. We're not going to hear their complaints of what went wrong in the grievance hearing. We don't want to make sure that the grievance hearing doesn't go the same way it went the last time? Is that really what your point is going to be?
I've made
that
my
you got
point.
too much time? You don't got enough time on your hands? If you need to go, you can go, John. I think it needs to be discussed.
May I make a few comments, please? I did live stream this, the reason to set up this workshop or this special meeting at the December 10th meeting to confirm, and I specifically referred to comments made by the city clerk who said, that we haven't looked at this committee yet, and the fact that we need to know, that we would like to know what they've accomplished, what they've done, was certainly my intent, and it was certainly I thought it was the purpose of this meeting. I do not certainly intend to go into any kind of grievances because that becomes a shouting match. That is for the legal people to decide, and it doesn't have anything to do with my interest or non-interest in employees. Our employees are our most important asset. What Commissioner Andrews is bringing up is something that's outside the purview of this special meeting. We're not even supposed to talk about special meeting. We're not even supposed to have a special meeting except to discuss exactly what is in section 4.5, rules and procedures of talking. Any such notice shall state the subject to be considered at the special meeting, which shall be restricted to the item that is specified in the notice. So, Commissioner Andrews, I'm not staying for this either.
Good, congratulations. You've all just proven my point.
Sorry,
that
sir,
all of you
I
guys,
have the floor.
you stopped.
I stopped for like 2 seconds.
Oh, I'm sorry. How
I would
long do you
just
have to
like
stop
say-
for before I can speak?
I would just like to say
Commissioner, you're still
that I
yelling.
also have tremendous respect and admiration for the employees that are employed by Madeira Beach, and I have no desire to go into any type of grievance or firing, hiring. That's not the topics here, so.
I just want to add, the topic is the communication with the Civil Service Commission. You guys refused to listen to them the last time they tried to speak on this topic, and you poo-pooed them off the dais when they told you what was going on. But you don't want to talk about it because it makes you guys look terrible because you didn't manage your city manager at the time. I want to make sure that going forward, our city manager now, which he does know, knows how to handle these situations properly. Everything in this case was handled inappropriately. And you guys don't get it. You sit here and you say you care about your employees. These are people's lives at stake. We've had a turnover in 2017 of 60%, in 2018 of 39%, and God knows what it's going to be in 2019.
Those are incorrect numbers.
Then wait a minute, this was you paid $15,000 for those numbers. They're on paper, Maggie. I can show them to you. I've shown them to you 3 times.
You have not showed them to me.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, after the meeting, I'll embarrass you and show them to you again. Those are the numbers. So we can't keep employees, and now, with unemployment rates at 3%, we can't attract anybody. We put an ad in the paper, nobody puts a thing in here. Nobody wants to work here with the turnover. We have nobody that's here with any tenure. We're not protecting our employees, okay? We have all of our departments are just infiltrated with inexperience. Because 3 years ago, you guys decided you were gonna hack everybody off and get everybody out of here. And look where we are now. Don't shake your head. Your first meeting, you fired the city manager.
That's the only person.
And then everybody went after that, one after one after one.
The board did not
after
fire
one.
those people.
Really? Yeah. So you would.
Mayor, if we could talk one at a time, maybe we could recognize the commissioner for a certain number of
Yes, sir.
minutes and then recognize another commissioner like they do in Congress, perhaps just so that we have a civil discourse without 2 of us talking at the same time.
Commissioner.
May I say a comment? Okay, so as Commissioner Andrews just said, that the way our staff is right now he's already just stated that our current city manager does have does know this grievance procedure, and he said he does know it. So I'm not going to talk about what's happened in the past. I'm just not. It's bringing up, it's just rehashing, and I'm not going to. It's not our power to. It's not in our purview.
So
If somebody wants to make a
investigate.
lawsuit, pardon?
But if somebody, wait a minute, you're talking about low-level employees that make
No, sir.
$35,000 a year. How are they going to pay for an attorney to file a lawsuit against you?
Mr. Andrews, I have worked in low-level positions also all my life, okay? I'm 77 years old. Things are different now, and that is for the courts to decide. An employee is responsible for their own decisions, their own right to make them, and we can't, that's not our position. So I'm sorry if that's Want me to leave now? I see that we adjourned.
Oh, you
Well,
certainly
I
can
think
leave.
that-
That's
I'd
fine.
like to make a
It's
motion
no
to
big deal. We're not going
adjourn.
to talk about it anyway, because you guys did all your research beforehand to gang up on me before this even started. So congratulations. Go ahead. Why don't we just send these guys home? Because it doesn't even matter. You're not even going to listen to them anyway, so what does it matter? What do you want to know about the communication? You want to know about the cost of living increase from the Civil Service Commission?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, guys, come on up and talk about the cost of living increase.
And I want to know about the personnel thing. And you are a bully. You are really just a bully, Commissioner Andrews, so I'm sorry I have to say that, but I just have to.
I'm glad. I hope all the employees are listening to this conversation. I really do.
To hear what the activities and what has been the progress, especially, like I say, the personnel manual, what they thought about the salary survey that was done that we spent the $15,000 for. Those are important things to me. Those are important things that the citizens need to know that we care about when we have a Civil Service Commission, and the employees need to know about it too.
Well, I think we can go forward. Commissioner Andrews, as I said, this is not the time for this subject. I'm not saying that we don't want to discuss it. I'm saying this is not the meeting. The meeting is for another purpose, and if you want to bring this up, bring it up in a workshop agenda Saturday meeting, and we'll have a consensus to discuss it or not. Yes, sir.
John Hendricks, 569 Normandy Road. I'm Chair of Civil Service Commission. What I would like to see discussed, one of the things, is the guidance from administration over the Civil Service Board, because frankly, we got some mighty poor legal advice from our city attorney during things that were going on in the civil service. In fact, and I hope the other members will come up and speak on this too, because we were told procedurally how to go about having a meeting, and what we were told and what turned out were two different things. And we were shut down by both our city attorney and the city manager. So even with a unanimous decision by members that are on both sides of this political camp, not just one side, not just me, but in your side also, Maggie, we had a unanimous decision, and it was torn up and thrown in the garbage. And anytime you force someone out of here on hearsay, it's just not right. I managed a lot of people. If I got rid of someone because of something that someone heard that person said at a bar at 10 o'clock at night, I wouldn't have had anybody working for me. It's just a part of being management. And to have had a city manager that dealt with an employee that way, I think is unconscionable. And I think the advice we got from the city attorney was unconscionable too. Rather than doing what was right, it appeared to me that they were working together to be sure that this person didn't come back to work for the city of Madeira Beach. So I would like to see us have some better guidance procedurally on how to go about this. Obviously, Ralph Brooks is not the person to give us that guidance. I mean, we were lawyered up all over the place. There were lawyers for the city manager, lawyers for the city, lawyers for the Civil Service Board. It was a three-ring circus. And still, the person that was, they can call it anything they want to. We came up with a decision that it was not a resignation, it was a forced termination. We were supposed to have a phase 2 meeting per Mr. Brooks. And we were after the fact, we were told to stand down. So we need a procedure, and we need some people that are giving us honest, information on how to go about this. We don't need a kangaroo court.
John, before we let you sit down, is it okay if I ask? I just wanted to ask, I know you're on the civil service and everything. The rest of the committee that you're with for the civil service, are they on the, I don't know how to put it.
I'm the only one on the good side.
You're on the only one on the good side.
The rest are on the dark side.
Well,
I'm
you know,
kidding, guys.
It's just the fact that, everyone sat down and had a chance to talk about the situation that occurred at the time.
We had some discussions on it. I don't think anyone was happy about it. I'm more than happy for others to come up. Pam Rasmussen is here. She was asked to stay on the Civil Service Board. She was the chair at that time. And so she filled out another application, and lo and behold, she wasn't put there after she came back and was actually doing some more work as chair. She was undercut by this city commission. And someone was put on there that had no experience when we had a lady there with 7 years of experience that knew what was going on. I think it's deplorable that she was not put back on there. And I've heard that commissioners have said, I won't put so-and-so on a board. He knows John Hendricks. So, y'all, as I mentioned to you 3 years ago, Maggie, you've got to be pragmatic about how you do these things. You're mayor of all the citizens of Madeira Beach, not just the part that doesn't want any development. Is there any questions
Can I
for
make
me?
a comment
That's-
to Mr. Hendricks? We do have on our workshop.
I knew you'd have a question.
No, I don't have a question. I was just going to say on the workshop for tomorrow, but I do have lots of questions all the time, don't I? But the workshop meeting tomorrow does include, and I'm glad that it does actually, Ralph Brooks is really supposed to give us some information which does include the current agreement or whatever with the labor attorney, who I believe is what you're discussing. So tomorrow that subject will be kind of, I don't know how much it will be brought up or what, but I'll certainly raise questions. And I do agree with you that the Civil Service Commission does need better guidance from some board, but it certainly isn't, I do not believe that it is the Board of Commissioners, okay, that should give that guidance to the Civil Service Board, because we're all, I would have to say we're all not novices, but we're not all educated in labor law or in the things that are present now in this country and probably all over the world. I mean, I remember when we did discuss, and you were part of it, I'm sure, John, that about what communities even still have civil service commissions as opposed to really big cities that do have them, because the laws just change every day and every hour. And how can you really make informed, knowledgeable decisions as a layperson? It has to be, we have to depend on our legal opinions. So if you felt that the legality or that the individuals who assisted you were not the right ones, then that's one thing we need to look at. So thanks.
Well, one thing that you've got is it addresses directors. It addresses a termination process when a director, whether it's a marina director or whoever, wants to terminate someone. It doesn't address when the city manager wants to terminate someone. And that's part of what we were involved in, was that the city manager dug his heels in on this. And it didn't matter what the Civil Service Board was going to decide, because he didn't want a Civil Service Board anyhow. So it was predetermined before we even had all these meetings that, by golly, this person wasn't coming back to work for Madeira Beach. And as I say, both the bright side and the dark side agreed on this. It was a unanimous decision that this young person was not being treated right on this. I'm sure Mr. Daniels also feels like if he let go everybody that he had heard had said something bad about him off somewhere. He probably wouldn't have anybody working for him in a number of jobs he's had. It's just part of the territory, and you've got to have thicker skin than to be all upset about something like that. You got to move on. You're not. I hate to say it. Even in the job I was in, somebody said to me once, "You're not going to make friends here being that way." I said, "Honestly, I'm here to brew beer. I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to provide for my family. So I want to be congenial. I want to get along with people, but my first priority is to take care of the company that I'm working for. It's not part of my social network."
As part of the conversation that you're having at this time, normally all the people that are involved in all the committees that we have throughout the city, that we have here through City Hall, we represent each area. So it represents maybe 2 people from one area and 2 people from another and so forth like that. So I'm just making a comment because I'm not sure exactly who all is on the civil service, but I believe that was the way it was supposed to be set up.
Well, I think we're all here today, and I'll be glad to get back in the chair and y'all can speak with some others on some things that have gone on. I will say, this grievance hearing that we had and the way it was handled, and the way it was handled after our decision, I know we're an advisory board, but when you have a unanimous decision like that, to just throw it in the garbage can and dig your heels in and lawyer up and refuse to come and talk to the Civil Service Commission when we asked numerous times that Mr. Evans come in and talk to us, and he refused to do it. He lawyered up. Thank you.
Hey, John, really quick, I got a quick question for you. Did you guys ask for an independent attorney when you guys were as a Civil Service Commission? Was it becoming so overwhelming for you? Did you?
Well, we asked for an attorney when we were going over the handbook. We had a lot of questions on that. Specifically for the meeting, I don't remember that we did, Pam.
No. Okay.
I think we were, these guys were sent in to us and.
Right. I mean, it was a non-binding, non-judicial hearing. I mean, you guys could listen to the hearing, decide what was going on, and kind of move with it from there. Okay, so you never asked for any representation, and the thing lagged on 9-10 months from the time she was let go until?
No.
Okay. You mentioned it earlier. Did you guys come up with the idea to do a 2-phase hearing?
We were told to do it that way by Ralph Brooks.
Okay, so Miranda didn't come in here and say, let's do it. She wasn't an attorney.
No.
She wouldn't be thinking about that. Okay.
We are not to discuss individual employees.
What are you talking about?
I'm
We're not
sorry.
talking about individual.
You just mentioned the name of the grievance party.
Well, take your
That's
stuff,
wrong.
John, if you're going to leave. I apologize, John. I got too
No,
specific.
I'm sorry.
It's amazing. Okay, you can continue.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I may, before John leaves, when I came on board, we had an opportunity to chat and come to, well, it wasn't really a meeting of the minds because I think we both agree with the process. And I think there is value in have somebody as an oversight, a committee or a commission as an oversight to what I do as a city manager. And I don't take it personally. I think, I try to make the best decisions that I can when I'm dealing with personnel issues, and I welcome the oversight. And I think one of the things, though, that we might want to look at is the city manager shouldn't be directly involved with the commission's oversight. And the one incident that happened like the first week after I got here, it was already in the planning stages and everything. I sat back, because I shouldn't be there. If I need to realistically make a determination independent of the Civil Service Commission, depending on where that grievance is in a process and so forth, I need to do that. So if I hear testimony and I come away with a predisposition of what that discipline should be from what I heard in front of the commission, that's not fair to that particular individual. So we talked about moving forward, and I think John and I have a pretty good understanding of when we move forward, or as we move forward from when I took over as the interim and now the full-time manager, is that, there's certain things that I'm not going to be involved in because they have a function to provide. With that being said, though, there is no liaison really with the Civil Service Commission and the Board of Commissioners. So somewhere along the way, whether it's the HR director or somewhere in the line, well, she actually works under my office. So, but we need to probably come up with somebody that they could turn to and say, hey, I need this resource, I need that resource, and we can facilitate that as a city. But if we're going to have a commission and let them do their job, I think we also need to give them the tools that they might need along the way. So that's my only suggestion. I'm sorry I'm taking up your time, but I just wanted to say it while John was here in case he wanted to comment.
No, I appreciate it. And maybe we need to be with a law firm that has a little more diversity on job skills as far as being able to supply us with a labor attorney when we need it, or whatever type of attorney we may need, because it's like, it seems like now pick up the yellow pages and give somebody else a yell. It was a cumbersome process, and we really felt like we didn't have anybody we could really go to on who should be guiding us through the process. We got through that one, thought we were going to have a second meeting, second hearing, phase 2, as Mr. Brooks told us to do. And then after we came up with a decision, we were told we weren't going to have a phase 2 meeting. So the whole thing was just, it was very cumbersome, and it was demoralizing to me as a commission member. You always want to think things are going to work properly and fairly and correctly, and it was a big eye-opener that it didn't work that way. And I will say this too, that person that we're talking about, I know y'all don't want to talk about it, but during our last Civil Service Commission meeting in front of the rest of the commission, and I think they all agreed with me that this person that was terminated should be brought back. I think we need to do the right thing.
John, let me ask you one more question before I let you go. Sure. Is there anyone that actually guides you on your direction when you have these meetings and you have someone in for a particular reason? Is there someone there to legally advise you?
Well, they had a labor attorney in there. I guess we were given some guidance there that was sent in. But one of the biggest things that we ran into and the biggest problems was this phase 2 hearing, because we had a city manager that was just bound and determined he was done with it, and he wasn't listening to anything or anybody. Something had been said about him that he heard that was second or third, I don't know how many hands, but had been passed on, and he was bound and determined nobody was going to cloud his good name, and that person's out of here. And we still don't really even know if that even took place, and if it did, so what?
That's good.
And something else while we're on this subject, all of these commissions, when we are in our capacity as a commissioner or a board member, we need protection, because there was a false allegation brought against me on something that was said at a hearing. And by the time I got out of the meeting good, I had a complaint filed against me, even though it wasn't live streamed. So the only way that complaint could have been filed against me is somebody ran in there and got the person to file a complaint against me. It's the only way it happened. So we can't just be doing things for the city in our capacity and told after the fact, as I was told by Mr. Evans, you're on your own. When this gets out to all these other commissions that we've got, the committees, bid review, charter review, budget committee, and us, that if something happens in our capacity as a member of any of those boards, we're on our own legally and the city's not going to support us, you won't have anybody on any of these boards. That involved several $1,000s for me to protect myself, and I couldn't even come up here and get a hearing with you guys to clear my name.
I believe that is on the agenda for the next workshop to discuss legal fees.
So, yeah, it's something you've got to take care of, whether you're on the bright side or the dark side. If we're on a commission, if you expect people to be on these boards and commissions, you got to take care of them. So,
Thank you. I appreciate
any other questions?
Thank you.
Yes, I certainly agree that there is a lot of things that need working into, but certainly not looking at the past, although the past will have taught us, okay? The past will have taught us. And Mr. Evans is no longer here. Mr. Daniels is here. And if we agree that Mr. Daniels is in charge of bringing those things to us, we do not work directly with Civil Service Commission, and we all know that. But yes, I hope that, I believe that we're moving forward. So I would like to adjourn the meeting if no other Civil Service Commission current members have anything to say. Current members. Who sit on the
Go
board?
ahead, you can finish.
Y'all don't really need my name again, do you?
That's okay.
I would like to ask this board and the city manager to bring that person back to work. Y'all discuss it with each other.
I don't think we can. as a board.
You can discuss it individually with Mr. Daniels, but it was very poorly handled on the city's part. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Hendricks is 1,000% spot on. While we can't, Mr. Evans isn't here, and we can't adjudicate anything that happened before, we can acknowledge that it wasn't done correctly. I mean, it wasn't done correctly at all. Just planting, letting attorneys collude with each other on certain areas and having 3 attorneys facing one person, people's livelihoods, we brush this by like it's no big deal. Heck, it happened to me, but people's livelihoods are affected by this. People's 401ks go away. People lose their, this is a big thing. This is a big thing. And we as a city should be out there. It's always the big running joke that, people take government jobs, not for the pay, but for the benefits and for the job security and things like that. You just don't get that here. And that's something that really, the morale of this city and the atmosphere in City Hall and in the other departments has to change in order for us to maintain. Because you know what? Bob's got an impossible job. If you have people, you've got a bunch of people running around with less than 6 months experience, and he's trying to run a city. And you can't do that unless you have the continuity and the skill and the knowledge and the local knowledge of the people that have been here for a while. So, what we have to, while maybe it's inappropriate, and I agree with you, maybe it's inappropriate to dig it all up and to bring up names and things like that. But the whole thing is we are responsible for everything that happens, okay? Whether or not it's an employee issue or not, overall, we're responsible to make sure that our employees, our charter officers, are following the charter. Okay, we've already found that that's not happening in some cases. But that's our responsibility. So as much as we want to brush it away, and as much as we think, oh, well, it was only one person, we shouldn't even think about this, there's a lot more people that, we're going to find out more tomorrow. I mean, with the marine audit of the people that we've lost there. I mean, guys, these are people's livelihoods, and we can't just whimsically say, oh, well, he's not here anymore, so we're not even going to address it. That's all. Thanks.
All right. Pam Cohen Rasmussen, 567 Normandy Road.
Ms. Rasmussen very much as in her role, and she certainly was very good with the personnel manual and other items of civil service. However, Ms. Rasmussen is no longer a member of the board, and I didn't know that we were accepting that, so I'm going to excuse myself, but.
That was addressed, and that was asked by,
To this meeting.
she was asked to come to the meeting by the commission. We agreed to that.
So yes, I was asked to come to this meeting. I didn't really know why. The invitation had been given to me by Patty Cordish, your deputy clerk. I had a meeting on Thursday with Bob Daniels, Mr. Daniels, I apologize, about a different situation and things that we had to discuss. And so I asked him about it because I wanted to be able to come prepared. And so we spoke about some things about the Civil Service Commission while I was on there and the direction that I felt it probably should be taking. When I was part of that commission years ago, starting 7 years ago, the city manager would come in and sit on those meetings and give us a direction of what the meeting was about and what we were there to discuss, and then the chairperson took over and ran the meeting. But the city manager was there to kind of help us in case there was any problems with charter that we didn't understand. After the City Manager Crawford left, City Manager Evans came to one meeting. He said, I want you to work on the employee handbook and then work on salaries. So he gave us, that's the only direction he gave us. So then we went on about it and worked months and months and months on the handbook process. And then when the time came to start on the salary process, we got stopped because then the grievance came up, and that took us a while to talk back to what John Hendricks had to say. Yeah, there were 3 lawyers there. We didn't ask for any of them. We asked for a lawyer, and it was a labor attorney that came and spoke to us during the time we were working with the policy handbook to give us some direction on things we had questions about and questions that Karen Polson, your HR director, didn't have the answers to. So I think that it's important for the city manager to be in attendance at some of these meetings and to give some direction. And I think you need a nonpartisan committee that when an employee has a problem, that they can come and air that grievance and it will be heard with open ears and, not someone that already has an agenda. And then what Mr. Daniels had mentioned to me in this meeting, we spoke about that. Maybe he doesn't know all the backstory of the whole situation, and by us holding that grievance meeting and that grievance hearing, we can get into those backstories and everything and get every detail and give him those facts and make the recommendation to him. Whether it's unanimous or not unanimous, then we can give him that recommendation, or they can give him that recommendation since I'm no longer there, but then he has a better insight as to what may or may not have happened. And we have, Mr. Hendricks, as the chairperson, has the ability to subpoena people to come in and talk to them and give them a sworn statement, just like you would if you were in court. That's it. Anything else?
I have a question for you. Pam. At the service, when you have your committee meetings, whatever, you have an essential person there, like Karen or someone else from another department? No?
We did not. I think Karen was at maybe 2 of those meetings during the policy, and there were times when we asked for her to come in, but she was too busy with other things that she couldn't break away to come to the meeting. But no, not really.
But normally you would kind of suspect them to be there to answer questions.
Like I said, I was on this committee for 7, going on 8 years. And so the beginning 4 years or 5 years, forget how long it was, prior to all of Jonathan Evans being here, yes, the city manager was there, gave us some direction, and the chairperson took over the meeting and ran the meeting.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else?
Thank you.
Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Paul Tilka, 14091 North Bay Shore Drive. I am on the board commission, and I have attended all of the hearings and meetings that we've had, and I think, I was informed to show up and talk or bring paperwork and be prepared to discuss one particular case that we had before us. I think that's worthy, but I don't know if you are the people that really I should address concerning this. I think our manager and our attorney are the people that I would personally like to address to find out where we stand and what they know and how this began, this third-party hearsay that came via, I won't even get into that part, and I don't want to mention any individual names because you asked us not to, but in the course of our hearing, we ended up with a report from the city by Ms. Paulson that outlined what occurred for this poor employee. And I must say that I will side with this employee. She was placed under oath by our commission. I asked her directly, did she say the things that she was accused of saying? She denied it. And I questioned her again, and I would say that she absolutely denied saying anything. When you take an employee a manager is going to make a decision on third-party hearsay that comes down the line of that many employees were involved as it was passed down the line. Okay, and he arbitrarily made a decision based on emotion. I think he took the bait, and that's that. I think he got himself in before he really thought out. So I think it's a manager error. And then we've only had really 2 cases come before us in the time I've been sitting there. And in both cases, I will side with the employee. It was management. It was poor management. So we, as a commission, really should exist in some level or some capacity that gives a little bit of teeth. And when we subpoena somebody, or ask, I don't know how big of a subpoena it was, but when we ask somebody to appear and they refuse to appear, that should come before you then. But I don't think you need to deal with the trivial part. I do not agree with Commissioner Andrews. I think this particular case needs to go back to the very roots. And if someone perpetrated an act against the city, I think our city attorney should investigate and proceed. If agreements were broken, we need to go back to that, Ralph. And so I would welcome an invitation to talk to Mr. Brooks and Mr. Daniels anytime, and thank you very much. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer.
I'm sorry, Paul, I just have one question for you. I know that you and I both asked this question multiple times over the course of a bunch of meetings. Is this a right-to-work state? I'm sorry, is this a right-to-work municipality? And I think you'll agree we got a handful of answers, and all of them different at times, right? Right. Because I think there's some language in our handbook in comparison to language in our charter that kind of throws us off a little bit. I mean, the word for cause, definitely, the city manager has the authority, sole authority to fire somebody for cause. That for cause throws everybody off because we don't know. And every time we've asked that question, we really didn't get a proper answer. But, a lot of the things that we're talking about are huge, but the main focus of any grievance hearing are 2 words: due process, okay? We can go through all of the procedures, everything else, and due process is the main word at the end. And, I mean, you said you've heard 2 grievance hearings. In either hearing, do you think that the employee got due process?
I don't.
Okay, then we haven't done our jobs.
I don't know what the resolutions have been. We're stuck. I mean, the last one, I assume it's been resolved. I hope it has. It was pretty bizarre that a city this far along are permitting employees to record their hours manually and tally it at the end of the week. All of this is just not good management, in my opinion, that, you banking hours and all of this stuff. I asked the commission, and I think they did it. They put a time clock in. Am I right? So as far as I'm concerned, everybody here should have a time clock. Why not? This is what we should have, not just somebody on Friday sitting there and tallying up and saying, well, I worked here or there. If they work, they should be paid. If they don't work, they shouldn't be paid. Simple. And it's probably easier to do with a computer than somebody else logging in and taking and entering the material. So that's just that one. Yeah. So, thank you.
Is there anyone else on the commission?
Mike Cavallero, 348 Boca Ciega Drive. What happened last year, I wasn't here, part of the commission. I do know this year one of the things we did do when we did the handbook is we spoke about the process. A lot of it goes with educating the people in the departments. So if there is a grievance, it comes to that department head. Was Mr. Daniels, was that all passed through, the handbook that we worked on? Yes. Okay. So I know we adjusted days for times for grievances, made it a little longer. If something's, it was like 7 days, we may, I don't know the details, but Mr. Andrews, we did talk about it. And, from John and me not being there and bringing up the past issues, it was something we did address to try to make it fair for employees moving forward. So yes, Ms. Weinstein, we do learn by history. And then we're talking with HR and stuff that you got to educate your people. The grievances have to be timely. The folks, even at the line employees, need to know what they can do to move a grievance up. Okay, then it's up to the supervisors to review it and then bring it to the city manager. And I think that was part of the handbook. So I don't know if that was followed last year or not, but that's something we tried to implement so it's in writing for people to follow moving forward.
And Mike, I do have a quick question. Hi, how are you, by the way? That's great, and like I said, what my presentation was going to be about was moving forward to make sure that we don't, and I think I started with that, but that we don't make the same mistakes that we made in these earlier things. But, you do bring up a really, really good point that I was going to make as well today. When you were doing the employee handbook, by the time it left you and got to us, there was an entire section of discipline that was taken out of the employee handbook that, right. Yeah, that we didn't catch. And luckily, we caught it and got it reinstated because there would have been no discipline section in the employee handbook. So did you guys, and I know we spoke about it a little bit, but I'm a little fuzzy. Did you guys agree to that with the city manager, that should be gone, the discipline thing, or was that new to you that was out?
No, it's not new to me. It was part of the process, but we, once it went through, we came back and corrected it.
Oh, okay, good. So you did see it again after that was removed and then reinstated?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's all I needed to say.
Well,
Okay, thank you, John. Yeah, that's what I knew there was, but you did review it again after we reinstated it.
John wasn't at the meeting when we did that first time, okay? And it was taken out, okay? Then it came back to us because it was incorrect, okay? So I don't know who, we were there and we took it. It was taken out, I believe. But when it came back, we corrected it. Okay.
Madam Mayor, if I may, too, that was, actually, I wanted to make sure we had that in there, too, because if we didn't have a disciplinary policy in our personnel rules, then it'd be open for interpretation. So I'd much rather have it nailed down, and they all worked hard at getting it back to the items that we wanted.
Mike, I do have a question. When this was being removed, what was told to you the reason why we would remove the only section in the employee handbook about discipline?
I don't recall this.
Okay. Linda, do you remember it at all? Okay. Okay, because that's a pretty big section. I just thought that would seem to be something that, huh?
But also, I don't disagree.
Right.
It also brings us back to, having some communications
Correct. Thank you.
when we're having our meetings.
Thank you.
Linda Hine, 401 150th Avenue. I'm on the commission also. I wasn't there as part of the group when the original grievance went through, so I really have nothing to add. Everybody, what they've said, I totally agree with, and I have nothing to add, but I wasn't going to sit there and say, just not let you know I'm here, so everyone to be up here anyway. So, thank you. Come on.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I may, is because also what Pam brought up I thought was a good idea. I think in spite of the fact that I want to keep a distance when they're dealing with a grievance issue, obviously when they have a meeting, I'm all for being there and giving the direction that they might need and then letting them handle whatever that particular issues that they're dealing with. I don't want to interfere, though, when they're handling a grievance because, again, ultimately I'm going to be making a determination maybe on that particular grievance if I'm going to accept their recommendation, which 9 times out of 10 I probably will be. But, just in case there is a difference and there might be extenuating circumstances I uncover, but I'm more than happy to come back to the commission and explain to them why I made the decision I did. And I don't have a problem doing that.
Bob, I do have one quick question for you. What would be, and maybe it's a charter thing because I don't know, what would be because we do have Board of Commissioners members that are members of other commissions and other committees. What would be the problem of having a liaison from the Board of Commissioners being a part of the Civil Service Commission? Now, obviously, we couldn't get involved in day-to-day activities of employees and things along the lines there as far as giving recommendations, but just as an overseer of a committee like that, would there be any potential hazards? Or I mean, because I think it would give, I remember Mr. Hendricks has said this countless times, it would give the commission a little teeth if a Board of Commissioner member was on it to be able to advance the narrative, to be able to talk about things. I think it is kind of, this has absolutely nothing to do with you, but I think it's a little bit of a tricky situation when, if you are the subject of a grievance proceeding, you get to make the ruling on it after they give you a recommendation. That makes absolutely no sense at all. So I don't know what we can do to alleviate that. Following the rules would be probably the main reason to alleviate it. But I mean, there's going to be situations where things come up, and there's going to be misunderstandings and things like that. But is there anything that would prevent us from putting a board member on that commission like we have board members overseeing other commissions?
I guess that might be a question for our city attorney rather than myself, because I'm not sure. I haven't seen it done that way, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't do it that way.
Well, I guess the only things that you should consider, one, sunshine law, of course. So if you're a liaison to the Civil Service Board, that Board of Commissioner who's liaison couldn't talk to any of the Civil Commission board members except in a sunshine meeting. So it's fine for the meeting, but say between this meeting and another meeting, you can't call each other on the phone and talk about the issues. And the second one to keep in mind, and you could probably do it, but you'd have to just remember that the city manager has the sole power to hire, fire, and discipline employees. So if a commissioner was on the Civil Service Advisory Board, make a recommendation, for example, a finding that the employee had not resigned, but then the city manager makes a finding that the employee had resigned, there creates a potential conflict there when the city manager then comes back and meets with you as the city Board of Commissioners. You can't second guess his decision there. So you want to keep those things in mind, but theoretically you could have someone, it's a little bit more difficult to keep everything separated if you have a person that's going back in between the two roles, back and forth between the two roles.
You're starting to sound like Tom Gonzalez here. You're leaving off the last part of sentences. Okay? The city manager has sole authority to hire and fire and suspend with or without pay an employee for cause. That's the sentence.
You're probably correct. I'm just summarizing.
Okay, you summarized without for cause. That's the most important.
I was focusing on the role of a commissioner.
I got you.
Being on both boards.
Okay. I just wanted to make that point. This, I mean, we listened to Tom over here go through a whole ordinance and then stopped at the word except when it's overruled by the employee handbook. So I just want to make that point clear that we don't really, Ralph, we don't really have a clear direction on whether or not this is or not. And as Mr. Tilk has asked numerous times, is this an at-will municipality? If we're using the word for cause, is this an at-will municipality? I mean,
some employees can be disciplined or actually terminated without cause, and that would include the charter officers, the city clerk, city attorney, employees that are on probation. There is a discipline system that's in our employee handbook called like progressive discipline, but there are certain offenses like sexual harassment, for example, hostile workplace, that you could face immediate termination. So you wouldn't need.
Well, that would be cause.
Yeah,
so
and then there's also what happened in this case that people keep talking about today was the issue was whether or not that employee had resigned. Now, there was a difference of opinion. The Civil Service Board, Civil Service Commission felt that she hadn't resigned. Karen Paulson.
Ralph, you're talking about the case.
She did resign.
You're bringing up the person again.
Yeah, okay. So if someone resigns, there's no cause or no need for cause. If there's a resignation, that's not a termination. But typically, employees in municipalities and at state government and county government in Florida are protected by personnel manuals, policies, progressive discipline. So it's not completely at will as it is in a private sector in Florida. In Florida, in your private sector, you can fire someone without cause as long as it's not for a discrimination reason on a suspect class like race, religion, national origin. Those things, you can't just fire someone for one of those reasons without cause.
Okay. Well, we're talking, and you just brought up something, and I want to clarify your statement there real quick. We're not talking about the individual case, but you brought up voluntary resignation. What is the one key ingredient for a voluntary resignation? A dated and signed resignation letter. And that's the one criteria. That's it. There's really nothing else beyond that. And you just said that there was a discrepancy of whether or not they resigned or not.
It was the opinion of our labor lawyer from Gray Robinson, Tom Gonzalez, that it could be oral. And I understand what you're saying, that it is written, I believe in the personnel handbook, that it has to be in writing.
Has to be signed
Our labor
and
lawyer
dated.
advised that they could not sue for that.
Yeah, well, the labor lawyer was
orally.
he was representing the city manager and being paid by the city manager, would be paid by the taxpayers, not representing the employee. So that's something we need, again, we're just bringing up more situations where we have to come to a determination on what this actually is, because you can't sit here and say that there was a discrepancy of whether or not they resigned or not. My eyes, and in the eyes of the unanimous board, there was no discrepancy. There was nothing. That was unanimous. There was no
This could be
dated.
further clarified in the personnel handbook. I think they have been in the latest round, but they could be further clarified if you'd like.
No, it's still there. It's still there. So, I mean, there's some more work we got to do, guys. And that's why, and I know everybody snapped at me earlier, but that's why bringing this stuff up is going to save us a lot of money in the future, because we keep making these mistakes. Everybody's not going to be as nice as that person and myself and not branch a lawsuit onto the city. I mean, we got to be careful about these things that we're doing. And we have to make sure that our employees are following the rules. Because if they're not following the rules, it's going to land us in a lot of hot water, and we're their bosses, and it all flows up to us. Okay, so come re-election time, it's going to be like, You let this guy get away with all this, and we have employee lawsuits flying all over the place because nobody's following the rules, okay? Lack of institutional control, okay? Thank you, Ralph.
Mayor, may I? Oh, I was just going to add something that was already said. It was already talked about, and I just wanted to make it clear that the possibility of having a representative of the Board of Commissioners on either the Civil Service Commission or the Planning Commission, which are both charter boards, was done in the, probably many, many years ago, okay? If you look in the archives, it might still be in there, possibly, okay, where a member of the Board of Commissioners was on the Planning Commission or was on the Civil Service Commission. And I do remember that there were a lot of, there were a lot of problems with it, okay? And it was strictly relating to the sunshine violations, okay? So that was when it was changed, and a staff member, supervisor, staff member, became an adjunct to the Planning Commission and the Civil Service Commission. That's all I wanted to say. So it was done in the past.
Okay. Paul Tilka, North Bay Shore Drive. I'm also on the charter committee, and when we began that process, Clara provided us with numerous charters from cities around the state of Florida, mostly our size and like have you. I maybe in like 20, 25, 27 charters, and I think maybe only 3 or 4 maintained civil service. To that point, I don't know, but I just wanted to point that out. I wanted to ask the manager how he feels about our city maintaining a civil service commission. And to that, and the last point was, in reading about civil service commissions, oftentimes they will put an employee, city employee, on the civil service commission, not necessarily anybody high ranking. It's just that they would have a person on that committee. So that's pretty much it. Thanks.
The only problem Paul, that I've seen with that, it then becomes a popularity contest within the organization. Sure. So if you're going to have an independent review of a resident commission like we have here, I'd much rather it be a resident commission instead of, a popularity contest, so to speak.
I would realize it would be extremely difficult to do away with the Civil Service Commission because you'd need a charter referendum, I guess.
Right, it'd be a charter amendment, but I'm not advocating that, just so you know. I like the ability of having, through the grievance process, an oversight, and if, believe me, if I didn't take something into consideration, I'm more than willing to say, hey, you're right, I'm wrong, and we take care of the corrective action that needs to be done.
So I'd like to point out to the commissioners, this is a different management style. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak on the civil service topic? Then I'll open the floor for public comment. You're the only public, so.
Did you see my head exploding when some terms were used? Okay. Helen Price, 13319 Boca Ciega Avenue, here in the beautiful city of Madeira Beach. We throw around a lot of terms that we're driving to be crazy. We say right to state, right to work state, and at will, status and things like that. 2 completely different things, don't even interconnect at all. But that's just one thing that was getting my goat. But in the grievance issue, maybe all we need is a 1-page process, a procedure, like the civil rules of civil procedure, on how a grievance should take place. There should never be attorneys at a grievance. It should be all intra-company, right? No boyfriends, no spouses, none of that. It should all be people that are involved in the issue. Call some witnesses if that's required, talk to the employee, talk to the employee's manager who has the problem, and then a vote be taken or it be worked out. It blows my mind that there were attorneys at something like a grievance, much less 3. And please, I think, just one bit of advice, after we get our handbook done, send it off to a good management side, labor and employment law firm, and have them look at it one last time before you put it in print. They do it all the time. They can turn it around in a week, a couple hours' work, as opposed to weeks and weeks and weeks by lay people. And I know you don't want to pay any more attorney's fees, but I think this would be well worth it. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, we have 2 people for a public comment. Pam, do you wish to say anything else?
I'll just tail off of what Ms. Price said, is that I agree, there should not be any lawyers or attorneys at a grievance hearing, because to me, then that's not a partisan committee. They're looking out for the mayor, or they're looking out for the city manager, they're looking out for whomever, but there's no attorney there for the employee, so it's not fair for them either. It's already a stressful enough situation as it is, and then to have attorneys there, and 3 of them. We never asked for any, but they were just there. And, you know, we were told to do things a certain way, and then that certain way didn't happen. And we tried to do that process, and we were told to stand down. And I even have a voicemail still from Matt McConnell, who was the one that was supposed to be representing us. I was told to stand down. I understand your concern. But he just wanted to reach out to me about that and said, yes, I was told to stand down by Ralph Brooks, and we didn't get to proceed to the second part of the hearing.
Thank you. Floor is closed for public comment. Anything from the commission? I want to thank you all for being here and for answering our questions and giving your reports and just for doing a good job. And there be no further business. We are adjourned at 4:42.